Christian parenting.
How does a person move from childhood to adulthood? How can we help our kids make this essential transition? Join us today for Family Vision.
Hi, my name is Amy Rienow. Welcome to Family Vision with my parents, Dr. Rob and Amy Rienow, strengthening families through practical, encouraging, and real conversations.
Hi, Rob Rienow here with Visionary Family Ministries alongside my beautiful wife, Amy.
It's great to be here today.
We are going to have a great conversation about putting together a plan to help our kids move from childhood to adulthood. That transition doesn't just happen automatically as the calendar months go by. I'm sure we all know someone who's the age of an adult, but who functions in many ways still like a child. Now, before we jump in, Christmas is right around the corner. I want to tell you about a new Advent devotional from our partners at Christian Parenting. It's called Read, Ask, Go. It's an interactive Advent devotional for your whole family. It'll take you from December 1st through December 25th. And the scriptures, the activities, the challenges in the book are going to help your whole family prepare your hearts for Christmas. So it's Read, Ask, Go, interactive Advent devotional. You can check it out at cpadvent.org. That's cpadvent.org. All right, sweetheart, this is going to be fun. Amy and I are going to give you a practical tool today to help your son, help your daughter take a big step from childhood toward adulthood. We call these our 12-year-old challenges because this is something we do when our kids turn 12. So it's their year from 12 to 13.
Now, of course, these could be done at any age, but we chose this age and this year because historically, this transition from childhood to adulthood took place at 13. That's why you have the celebration of the bar mitzvah in the Jewish faith, is because you are celebrating this transition. And interestingly enough, it kind of brings up probably a whole other podcast about this concept of adolescence. And we all know I like to talk, and I won't go down that rabbit hole too much right now because there's so much I can say on that. However, adolescence is a relatively new concept. It's a 20th century concept. And in fact, around the world, you don't even have adolescence because many kids, because of their culture, they don't have this time of floundering, you might call it, to some extent, meaning that they have to go straight from childhood to adulthood for economic reasons, usually. So because we're a Western nation and we've been able to have a little bit more freedom, our kids get to experience adolescence. It's time of transition that we consider usually from childhood to adulthood. But in reality, what used to occur when we first thought of adolescence, it might have started at more like 16 and ended at 18. It now almost starts at 11 and goes on to 23. So we felt like this idea of giving our kids kind of a concrete challenge at 12 helped them to realize they were making this adjustment from childhood to adulthood. Not that we're saying that our 13-year-olds are adults, by no means, but it kind of gives them a clear boundary or a clear thing to cross over.
Right.
And that's what we wanted to communicate.
Yeah, so when the kids turn 12, we explained to them that this is a big year ahead. And we want to see them to start to make this transition to being a young adult. We want them to act more like a young adult, have more of those privileges, which is what we talked about in our last episode. And so we give them some challenges, 3, 4, 5 challenges that we want to see them pursue in the next year before they turn 13. And for all of our kids, the first challenge has always been the same, and that's to read through the entire Bible in a year.
Absolutely. And before I even just talk about that specific challenge, I just want to connect to that. This is also ties into our previous podcast about a really concrete, practical way to apply increasing adult responsibilities before they earn some special privileges. And our kids have always enjoyed this year of 12-year-old challenges because when they get to 13, they get a little bit of taste of some of these adult privileges that they haven't had before, and that's an enticing thing at the end of the 12-year-old challenge. So like the first one you said was reading through the Bible, the whole Bible, cover to cover. Now, in all honesty, none of our kids have been able to achieve that challenge in 1 year, which is just fine with us, because what's been cool about it is that it just started them on a pathway of the importance of reading the Bible cover to cover. And this really came from the fact that as an adult, I don't think I read the Bible as a book cover to cover completely until I was in my late 20s, even though I'd been a Christian my whole life. So we were just convicted that getting the Bible in that form and reading it that way is just really important, and we wanted them to know that the sooner that you do this in life, the better. And then it just also continues the habit of once you finish it, you start it again. And so even though they didn't finish it that year, they've all achieved reading the Bible cover to cover by the time they're at least 13 or 14. I mean, by 14, I would say. They usually,
I think most of them finished maybe a year later.
2 years, yeah, right.
But I didn't finish reading the whole Bible until I was in college.
Right.
So we just thought that was tremendous. Well, let's go through and give some examples of other 12-year-old challenges, and we're going to use two of our kids, Lissy, who is now 22 and married, and Ray, who just turned 12. In fact, it'll be just in the next few days that I'm going to sit down with Ray and give him his 12-year-old challenges. So, Amy, the second one on Lissy's list was to support the family and to try to save the family $50 to $100 a month. Talk about that.
Well, a lot of the challenges that when I thought about this with Lissy, it really applied to the fact that, me coming into motherhood and being a wife, a lot of the training I'd received in my regular education, even being a top student and knowing how to do well and have success in the academic world and even in my professional world, did not necessarily translate for me to success in my home world when I became a wife and a mother with kids. There were just some skills that I wish I had developed more. And one of them is just simply being very aware of my spending and how that affects all of our financial goals. And, because at the time when I was doing these challenges, I wasn't at this point working outside the house in any way. So I was kind of trying to get Lissy the idea that even if you're not producing, even if you're not bringing money in, you can still help support your family financially by being savvy with the what you do have. So that actually got her, it kind of combined with some cooking challenges for her, and she actually loved cooking, and she always has loved cooking, and she's actually
fell into her sweet spot.
She's a far better cook than her mother.
False statement.
Well, that's sweet of you to say.
All
but
she learned from you.
Well, no, that's not true. I'm just going to say that. The cooking channel has lots to do with Lissy's expertise in cooking. But she was very interested in that, and it enabled her to take some of these skills where she wanted to, bake. It was like baking regularly really helped save money for our family. When she makes a huge batch of banana bread and pumpkin bread and cookies, it's saving money because that is a lot less expensive than going and buying those things. So
her getting married and moving out that was an impact to our home.
But if you remember,
decrease in baked goods.
But if you remember too, it actually goes into her next challenge. But I don't want to talk too much. You go on next, and I will tell you about how that connected to another one of her challenges.
Yeah, okay. So back to Ray, the second challenge that I'm going to go over with him in a few days is to interview 4 missionaries and watch 10 missionary movies or documentaries. Now, none of our other kids have had this on their 12-year-old challenges. But this past summer, when we were at family camp, Ray came to us and said that he felt like the Lord might be putting it on his heart to be a missionary. And sometimes God does that for a very young child, gives them a sense of calling, gives them a sense of purpose. Now, I have no idea if Ray's going to be a missionary. We don't know if this is a long-term calling from the Lord. But one thing for sure, if your child comes to you with a spiritual prompting, if they have a sense, I think God might be calling me to do this, prompting me to do this, you want to make sure you water the seed.
Right.
We don't know how God's going to grow it, but you want to just water the seed. So if he came and said, I think God might call me to be a missionary, I want him to spend time learning more about missionaries, reading more about missionaries, talking to missionaries, and exposing himself to the missionary world. And then we'll just water it, and we'll see if God brings the growth.
And I think there's such a balance between taking that seriously, like you're expressing so they feel very validated, at the same time not pushing it or assuming that just because they said that this is you getting it in our head, okay, this is what you're called to do, or holding it over them in any way.
Exactly.
But it's really important to validate and respect and figure out what you can do to help that. So that's a great one. Well, another part of Lissy's, one of her challenges was to show hospitality. And again, this connected back to her first one in some ways because she loved cooking and she loved making all these wonderful baked treats. And it was interesting how she really, really enjoyed giving those to neighbors and passing cookies down the whole street. And I thought that was a really great skill for her to develop because, again, a lot of what she was developing were kind of things that I was realizing I didn't get developed that much in my own training per se because I always felt like I was catching up as a wife and a mother. I just felt like I could write really good papers, but not necessarily make a bunch of cookies that easily, and it just those were the areas that I needed to grow in. But I realized that they were critical areas to have. I wanted to grow more in those areas. And I think she could see that these were going to be skills that no matter what path she went on, it's great to have some of these skills. And what's nice about them is that, a 12-year-old can start learning how to do these things very, very independently. So it wasn't just she actually took on cooking a meal 2 times a month. And she also learned to make, we have here written down the Agnew chicken soup. Just a shout out to the Agnew family that taught me so much in that stage of life, but learned how to make some staples that she still, is skills that she's using today. But again, it's just very interesting that, if we don't, as moms, kind of think of some of these things that we know will be helpful for our children to have, there's skills for them to have, that we can think of things that aren't coming down like from school. So often we think of what the school says is important is what's the most important. But these 12-year-old challenge got me thinking, okay, what would I like to have known at this age that would have helped me be better prepared for where I am now in life?
And some of these things we're talking about today, you're talking about challenging Lissy with baking and chicken soup. And some of these things offend the 21st century sensitivities. They sound very domestic and things like that. And we talked about this coming into this episode. I think we're going to do more in a future episode, on this. But you might be saying, well, gosh, it sounds like, Rob and Amy kind of have this view that a woman, or in this case, a daughter's, primary ministry is the home, and they're really preparing her to minister to the home. Well, do you guys believe that? Absolutely, 1,000%. We believe that a woman's primary ministry is her home. That's Titus chapter 2. And at the same time, we believe that a man's primary ministry is the home. That's Titus chapter 1. So we want to train our sons to be prepared if God would bless them to be husbands and fathers. That's their most important mission, loving and serving and leading their home. And the same thing, training our daughters. If God prepares them to be wives and mothers, that's their most important mission. So it might sound domesticated, if you will, or home-focused, but we do that unapologetically, helping our daughters prepare for their future family, helping our sons prepare for their future family. So back to Ray, one of his challenges, and we've done this with the older 2 boys as well, is that by the time you're 13 years old, to have $1,000 in a bank account, faithfully giving 10% to church along the way and 20% to the family budget. We've talked about that before on a podcast on work and money. But I don't know about you, but I don't get to keep 100% of what I make for discretionary spending. I have about 0% of my budget, or maybe 1, for discretionary spending. So as we think about helping our kids and as they begin their early years of making money, it was so important for me growing up that tithing was right out of the gates something that my mom required/taught me to do from the first time paper route money came in. And so as money comes into our kids when they're younger, they're going to contribute a little to the family budget too, to the mortgage and to groceries and things like that. Now, Amy talked about privileges that await at the end of the 13-year challenges. One of those is in our house, that's when you get to get a cell phone.
Correct.
And you have two options for that. You can either get an old, junky, hand-me-down, quasi-broken phone from Dad's drawer of old devices, or if you want to buy a newer, fancier cell phone, you can. And we have had our older boys use a significant chunk of their $1,000 that they saved in their 12-year-old challenge to plunk it down for that fancy phone.
I think they really enjoyed the fact that they had to earn the privilege to buy a phone. And it sounds like, wow, you're just earning a privilege to buy a phone, not getting a phone. But there was something about that process, and they all are doing it. It's not just the boys. The girls, too, are earning through their challenges, too. They're in a privilege to get a phone. But I noticed that with the boys, because they wanted that high-end phone so much, there was just a lot of pride that they had accomplished this, and they got the privilege of buying a phone. So I think that's just a great picture to understand how you can, in your own home, create a different culture, and you can it's a huge sense of pride when kids have accomplished something and earned something themselves. They tend to enjoy it even more, I think. But Lissy had some other projects. First of all, I wanted to mention with Lissy, though, too, that interestingly enough, she was always an entrepreneur at age 10 is when she started her dance camps, and she was doing that out of our home, which kind of grew out of the neighborhood dance recitals. She realized that she could make a little money doing dance camps and teaching dance to her younger sister. So she had developed a lot of these entrepreneurial skills as well, almost independent of the 12-year-old challenges. So she had kind of, excelled in that area in many ways, and that has continued as a tradition in our home, which has just been fantastic. But another challenge I had for her is just simply working on making the home a prettier place, or home organization. I've had to sit down with these girls, and you may agree to disagree with me on this, but I tell my girls that no matter what, when you start your own home and you are decorating, and typically when people walk into your home, and when people walk into my home, it's not a reflection of you, Rob. It's a reflection more of me. That's just the way our culture works. Like, people don't come in and usually say, "Oh, Rob, you've decorated so well," or you know what I mean? Like, that's just a hard.
I have gifts.
Hard reality. Well, it's not just decorating. I'm talking about getting, like, the way the home is organized, and if it's and I struggle very much with clutter and keeping the home functioning. And I've had to kind of explain to the girls, working or not working, this is something that's going to land in your lap, whether you like it there or not. And I generally don't like it in my lap, but I didn't have a choice. It's in my lap. So I wanted to, in that 12-year-old challenge, teach Lissy and Lainey and Millie as well. They all had to have specific organization projects to help them learn some organizational skills in the area of our spaces, because frankly, that's just not something that any of us Rienows naturally excel at. I know these women who talked about that, oh, this child is born organized. I'm like, well, good for you. I've had 7. None of them came born organized. I'm like, I'm still waiting. I don't know. Maybe it'll be a latent gift. Lainey has the most promised, I think. But still, none of us fall into the born organized category.
Well, the last one on Ray's list might be my personal favorite, and that is to take over lawn mowing responsibilities. Now, that'll be spring 2022, but honestly, I put that one on there not for him. I put it on there for me. But it's important for him to step into that. You can customize these for your kids. You can do 14-year-old challenges, 16-year-old challenges. Fill it with grace. Work together, affirm any progress that they make along the way. You do not want this to be some sort of heavy-handed, burdensome thing for them. We'd love to hear your ideas.
And I just want to add, too, that some of those examples of those adult privileges that you may seem like not a big deal to you, but for our kids, for example, look forward, once they've passed their 12-year-old challenges and they're 13, they no longer have to ask me if they can get a pop out of the fridge. They can go get it whenever they want. You know what I mean? They start to develop some of these things where, okay, I don't have to ask Mom for having a snack. I can have snacks whenever I want to have them. And
Amen.
And it's just little, it's even these little things, and staying up late, or, that actually when a kid realizes that they've crossed a barrier, they've earned privileges, they take more joy and pride in them.
Right on. Yeah. Well, hey, send us your questions about this episode. Send us your ideas. Maybe you've done some of these growth challenges for your kids before at different ages. We would love to learn from you, love to hear what you've done. You can reach us at podcast@visionaryfam.com, podcast@visionaryfam.com. And we bring this podcast to you, and Visionary Family Ministries comes to you because of a very generous team of financial supporters. And if you would like to help us get this message of a Christian vision for family life out around the world, you can support us by going to visionaryfam.com/donate, visionaryfam.com/donate. We would be grateful to partner with you, and we're excited about our next time with you on Family Vision.